My wife was adamant separate cars for the company's anniversary dinner. She didn't even ask, just informed me like it was part of the evening's logistics. As I pulled the car out of the driveway, my 12-year-old son leaned toward me. His voice hushed. Dad, Mom doesn't know I found this. My name's Logan Pierce. And now, looking back, I know exactly when things began to fall apart. It wasn't dramatic. No big fight or shattering revelation. It was that kiss. A lifeless peck Clarissa gave me one Tuesday evening. Nothing tender. Nothing warm. It felt more like something you'd give to a distant relative out of obligation than to the man you'd spent over a decade building a life with. I stood in the bedroom doorway that night, watching her as she prepared for what she called the big night, her company's 15-year milestone celebration at the downtown Marriott. The kind of event where executives congratulate themselves over filet mignon and market forecasts. She'd been obsessing over it for weeks: her dress, her shoes, how she'd wear her hair. Clarissa stood at the mirror we bought back when our laughter used to fill that house, adjusting her shimmering silver gown, inspecting herself from every angle, like her reflection owed her something. She didn't even glance at me. We should drive separately, she said, still facing the mirror. Her tone was clinical, like she was mentioning the time of her next haircut. No invitation to discuss. No concern about how it might feel. In case you want to leave early. It hit harder than I expected. I just nodded, playing along like I always did lately. The agreeable husband, the one who kept quiet, the one who didn't make things harder. And it's wild how easily I slipped into that version of myself. But the kicker? She said it like I was the problem. Like I was the one pulling away, hiding behind distance and excuses. When really, it was her. Clarissa hadn't been the same in months, maybe years. Somewhere between the promotions, the deadlines, and the networking cocktails, she became someone I barely recognized. Detached, preoccupied, always somewhere else, even when she was home. The late nights at work became weekends away. She wasn't cheating, at least I didn't think she was, but she was definitely gone in all the ways that mattered. I used to try. I'd make little efforts, suggest we grab dinner, ask about her day, offer to go on walks like we used to when we were just figuring each other out. But she responded like I was an afterthought, like I was background noise. And when someone keeps brushing you off, eventually you stop reaching out. It's not coldness, it's survival. Still, this dinner was different. It meant something to her. She wanted to be seen, to be respected, to fit into a world that wasn't built for people like her, and she earned that. She climbed her way up from the bottom and fought every inch for her spot at the table. I understood her ambition. I respected it. I just didn't understand why I couldn't be part of that picture anymore. Traffic's going to be rough anyway, I managed to say, even though my throat felt raw. She nodded without turning, too focused on making sure every seam on that dress was flawless. The event starts at 7:30, she added. But I should be there early. She spoke like she was checking off a list. And the truth? I had no idea what her work life looked like anymore. There was a time she'd fill me in on all the drama, laugh about annoying colleagues, vent about ridiculous deadlines. Now, I wouldn't know if her manager had retired or if she got a new team. Okay, I said, stepping back. See you there. That was when she turned, just briefly. I caught something in her eyes, regret maybe? Or maybe that was just me wanting there to be something more than emptiness. Logan, she called after me. I turned. You look nice tonight. A simple compliment, but it landed like a confession she didn't know how to voice. I nodded, unsure how to respond. A little later, I was helping Micah into the passenger seat of the Honda. Buckling him in had become second nature, though I had to move the seat back a bit. He was growing fast. Soon he'd be eye level with the dashboard. A T12. He was already thoughtful and quiet, carrying himself with that sort of calm that most people don't develop until much later. He reminded me of myself when I was his age. You looking forward to it? I asked as I started the engine. He shrugged. Mom said there'd be good food. I laughed gently. Yeah, probably. These things always have something fancy, some kind of gourmet pasta, maybe a dessert tower with chocolate fountains and fruit. That got a faint smile from him, which felt like winning a prize. Lately, Micah had been more reserved, a little more internal. Not in a worrying way, just thoughtful, like he was quietly piecing together something he couldn't fully articulate yet. I chalked it up to his age. That transition where kids start realizing adults aren't superheroes, that sometimes marriages look good on the outside but feel hollow inside. We rode in easy silence for a bit, the radio playing some old school rock in the background while we talked about school, basketball tryouts, and whether we should grab gas on the way home. The everyday rhythm of a father and son, familiar, peaceful. But even then, I couldn't stop thinking about Clarissa, wondering if she was already there, walking through the hotel lobby, charming her coworkers, laughing that work laugh she'd perfected over the years. Part of me felt selfish, like maybe I should have just swallowed my pride and been her +1, without complaint. But the other part, the one she kept at arm's length, knew she hadn't left me much choice. She wanted distance. So I gave it to her. I was caught up in that thought when I noticed Micah shifting beside me. He leaned in slightly, voice low, like he was about to share something sacred. You know that look kids get when they're excited but scared at the same time? Like they've stumbled onto something big and aren't sure if they should say it out loud? That was the look Micah gave me right before he said it. We were alone in the car when Micah leaned toward me, his voice hushed. Dad, I found something, but Mom doesn't know. I raised an eyebrow, curious but calm. What is it, buddy? He looked around like he was checking for hidden cameras, then slid his hand into his jacket pocket. My first instinct was that he'd stumbled across a birthday surprise. Clarissa had been hiding a small gift maybe, or something she planned to surprise us with for Christmas. She was always good at hiding things for special occasions, always choosing clever places she thought none of us would ever search. But when Micah opened his palm, what I saw was the last thing I expected. No colorful wrapping paper, no velvet jewelry box, just a white plastic card, the kind you get at any budget hotel across the country. At first glance, it seemed harmless, ordinary, but two details made my stomach twist into knots. There was a number written in blue ink across the magnetic strip, 237. Below that, in that same neat handwriting, was a name, Darren. I kept my hands on the steering wheel, kept the car moving, but inside, I felt like the ground had vanished beneath me. Outwardly, I didn't flinch. I kept the same grip, same speed, same calm look. But internally, I was in free fall. Where'd you get that? I asked, pleased that my voice didn't crack. Mom's purse, he whispered. I was digging for gum yesterday and it just fell out. Micah didn't need an explanation. At 12 years old, he already understood the weight of what he was holding. Hotel key cards don't usually end up in a mother's wallet, especially not with a strange man's name scrawled on them. Not unless something was seriously off. I think I missed our turn, I said lightly, signaling toward the nearest exit. We were supposed to be heading downtown to the Marriott. Micah didn't say a word, just nodded quietly and leaned back into the seat, still clutching the key card like it might vanish if he loosened his grip. Smart kid. He gets that from me. The detour took less than 20 minutes. The hotel was easy enough to spot, one of those generic chains with beige bricks and a forgettable logo, situated just off the highway. A Hampton Inn, the kind of place built for overnight business trips and out-of-town conventions. Unremarkable, efficient, discreet. I parked at the rear of the lot, where our car wouldn't draw attention. Stay here, I told him gently, my eyes meeting his. The AC was still running, the radio playing soft rock, the world outside deceptively normal. He nodded again, no protest, just quiet understanding. He was sharp, always had been, and right now, he understood more than I wished he did. I stepped out and crossed the parking lot slowly, each footstep heavier than the last. My chest was tight, breathing felt difficult. Part of me was still clinging to hope, whispering that there could be some explanation. Some innocent reason Clarissa had that key card. A client meeting, a canceled reservation, anything. But deep down, I already knew. Inside, the lobby smelled like chemicals and stale coffee. Framed artwork lined the walls, cheap prints of flowers and oceans that tried and failed to make the place feel welcoming. The clerk behind the front desk barely looked up as I passed. I found the elevator, jabbed the call button, and waited. My finger trembled slightly. When the doors slid open, I stepped inside. The elevator smelled faintly of aftershave and something floral, maybe perfume. Something that clung to the air in a space where people came to do things they didn't want anyone to know about. Second floor. The ding of the elevator bell sounded cold and hollow. I stepped out onto that patterned carpet meant to hide dirt, wear, and secrets. The hallway stretched out, door numbers in neat rows. My eyes scanned left and right, hunting for 237. There it was. Halfway down, I walked toward it slowly, every step echoing in my ears like a countdown. When I reached the door, I stood still, listening to my breath, to the silence, to the electric hum of something far down the corridor. This was it. The moment I could still turn around, pretend I'd seen nothing, heard nothing, go back to the car and carry on like life was normal. But that moment passed. I raised my fist and knocked once. Firm, casual, not too loud, just enough. The door creaked open a few inches, and in the small gap between the frame and the darkness inside, I saw him. A tall man stood on the other side of the door, early 40s, well-built, and carrying himself like someone who didn't often hear the word no. His shirt was open and hung carelessly over his torso, his feet covered in socks but missing shoes, like he'd made himself at home. His hair was tousled in a way that didn't look accidental, like someone's fingers had been running through it not long ago. He looked at me like I was a random intruder, maybe a delivery guy who rang the wrong bell, puzzled, but not alarmed. Just one more unexpected moment in a life he clearly had under control. And then he paused. Something in my face, or maybe in the way I stood there, unmoving. That look men get when they realize exactly who they're staring at. A flicker of recognition crossed his face, subtle at first, then unmistakable. The kind of recognition that sinks in like a cold truth. From somewhere inside the apartment, her voice floated out. That laugh, unfiltered, warm, completely at ease. It used to be mine. Darren? Who is it? She called out playfully. Darren. So that was his name. Mine wasn't. He turned his head slightly toward the sound, then back at me. And just like that, he began to shut the door slowly, almost respectfully. I didn't stop him. We arrived at the celebration separately, just like she'd arranged. The hotel's ballroom was already buzzing with the kind of polished chaos only corporate events can pull off. Waiters weaved through crowds with flutes of champagne, execs traded practiced hugs and hollow laughs, and conversations hovered like a low hum in the air. I was there first. That gave me time to grab a drink and settle in at our assigned table number 12, right near the front, where the heavyweights sat and watched everything unfold like royalty. Her name was printed on a crisp little place card beside mine, the kind of detail that screamed money and image. She made her entrance 20 minutes later. The transformation was startling. Gone was the woman I'd watched fixing her dress earlier in our bedroom mirror. In her place stood someone else, entirely poised, magnetic, utterly composed. She floated across the room with the kind of ease that only comes from years of practice, exchanging smiles and small talk with a surgeon's precision. Her laugh rang out in just the right places, her eyes locked with the right people at just the right moments. She wasn't just playing the part, she owned it. When she finally reached our table, she gave me a smile so bright it could have passed for real if I hadn't known better. Logan, she said, brushing a kiss against my cheek like we were the golden couple in a rom-com. Glad you made it. Traffic wasn't too bad, I hope? That kiss, polished, hollow, perfectly staged, landed in its usual spot, not a millimeter off, not an ounce of sincerity in it. Her scent was different. Tonight, something expensive and floral, not the usual perfume she wore, definitely not the one that had been on her dresser this morning. Wouldn't miss it, I told her, raising my whiskey glass in a mock toast. 15 years, it's huge. She beamed, like I'd said something profound, then launched into an animated breakdown of sales projections and retention numbers. The thing was, she was good. Scary good. Smarter than me, if I'm honest. Watching her command that room was like watching a masterclass in corporate finesse. But my mind wasn't in that ballroom. It was in room 237, behind that slowly closing door. With her laugh echoing in the background like a punchline, I wasn't in Ondata tea around 8:30. The company's founder, Eleanor Raines, took the stage. She didn't need a mic. Her voice was steel-wrapped in velvet, decisive and effortless. The kind of presence that could bend steel without raising her tone. 15 years ago, Eleanor began, raising her glass. We started with nothing but a dream and enough caffeine to fuel a small country. Polite laughter spread across the room. Clarissa clapped right on cue. Her face radiated attentiveness. She even tossed in a few enthusiastic absolutely s and well said s during the speech, like she was campaigning for Employee of the Year. Tonight, Eleanor continued, we celebrate not just our milestones, but the people behind them, the long nights, the tough calls, the impossible deadlines we survived together. More applause, more wine, More rehearsed celebration. Clarissa leaned in during the clapping, letting her fingers brush against my sleeve. Isn't this incredible? She whispered, eyes lit up like a kid on Christmas morning. Eleanor hinted something big's coming. Maybe a new position. Promotion. I gave her a smile and a nod, the kind you offer when you're expected to, not when you feel it. The supportive spouse. The doting husband. The man behind the woman with the bright future. But all I could think about was the door in that quiet hotel hallway. The way he looked at me, and how easily she laughed when she thought I wasn't listening. She'd been working the room for hours, laughing, chatting. The picture of poise and confidence at this overhyped corporate bash. She joked about the bland chicken and smirked through the endless slideshow touting company milestones like they were Nobel Prizes. To anyone else, she looked like a woman in her element, thriving, admired. If I hadn't stood outside room 237 earlier that evening, I might have bought into the performance myself. When Eleanor raised her glass to toast the next 15 years of growth and glory, Clarissa tapped her champagne flute against mine with a smile so bright it could have lit up Manhattan. I smiled too, had to. That was the role I'd been cast in. Loyal husband, supportive spouse. Meanwhile, I couldn't stop picturing the cream-colored wallpaper in room 237 or recalling the exact number of rings she had slipped off before letting someone else admire her the way I once used to. Later, we were back home. She was beside me in bed, her breathing steady but too deliberate. It wasn't the kind of breathing you hear when someone's drifting peacefully to sleep. It was the rhythmic cadence of someone faking it, counting down the minutes until you give up trying to talk. She'd come in late, close to midnight, gushing about post-event cocktails and deep conversations with execs, told me I was amazing for supporting her so wholeheartedly, kissed me on the forehead like I was some harmless old friend before slipping into the bathroom to start her exhaustive bedtime ritual cleansing, creams, brushing her teeth with the determination of someone scrubbing away more than just remnants of food and alcohol. Now she lay on her side, her back firm against the boundary of her half of our bed, wrapped in the silk pajamas I'd surprised her with last Valentine's Day. The space between us was wide, not just physical, a canyon carved by silence, avoidance, and the growing weight of unspoken truths. I stared at the ceiling, sleep as distant as trust. Eventually, I got up, went downstairs, sat in the dim light of my office and unlocked her phone. Yeah, I know how that sounds. Possessive, invasive, like some bitter, insecure man digging through his wife's privacy. But here's the truth: I'd mirrored her device nearly a year ago, back when the late nights started becoming the norm. Back when I told myself it was about safety, about knowing she'd be okay driving home so late. But somewhere inside, I must have known something was off, felt it in my bones, that quiet itch you can't explain until it turns into a gaping wound. I had access to everything: her messages, call history, photos, even the ones she thought she deleted. And Darren, that slick bastard, was smart. He didn't use her main contact list. No real name, no photo, just a ghost entry labeled D disposable number. One of those temporary ones you can grab with cash and no questions asked. But tech leaves footprints, and eventually, all trails lead somewhere. I found their first exchange buried in an old message thread from March, 6 months back. She was attending a tech workshop in downtown Austin, one of those networking-heavy seminars companies love. She'd been genuinely excited about it, said it might open new doors. I told her to go, even offered to pick up Micah so she could enjoy the evening mixer. The first message came at 9:47 p.m., that standard corporate tone. Great talking with you tonight. Let's continue our discussion on cloud strategy sometime. Nothing unusual. She responded 12 minutes later, absolutely. Rare to meet someone who really gets the challenges we're dealing with. Just two professionals clicking over work issues, at first. But the thread kept going. Conversations moved from systems and analytics to stress and frustration, to subtle digs at home life, jokes that only the two of them shared. By May, they were having coffee regularly. By June, it was dinner. By July, the photos started. Not inappropriate, but unmistakably curated. Hair just right, angles that flattered. The kind of pictures you send when you want someone to look twice. And then the things she said about me. Things that made me feel like a stranger in my own skin. Logan's so emotionally distant now. It's like I'm living with a ghost. We used to be close. Now I don't even know if he sees me. And she wasn't wrong, not completely. I had checked out. I'd built walls because she stopped letting me in. I pulled back to protect myself, but seeing those thoughts written out her version of our story was like being hit with a steel bat right to the ribs. What broke me wasn't just the emotional affair unfolding in plain text. It was the fact that while I was busy wondering how to repair us, she'd already started building something new, quietly, secretly, without even offering me the chance to try. There was one last thing I hadn't faced yet, one thought I'd kept locked away, too dangerous to entertain, but it kept creeping in while washing dishes, folding laundry, pretending nothing had changed. Micah, my son, 12 years old, clumsy limbs, wide eyes, but recently, I'd been studying him too hard, watching his expressions, measuring the curve of his jaw, looking for pieces of myself or for someone else. That night outside room 237, when the door closed and I saw Darren's face, that man's smirk, his eyes, I couldn't stop wondering if the betrayal went back further than 6 months, wondering if the lies had started long before, late meetings and burner phones, wondering what I didn't know, and if I ever really knew her at all. I searched his face that evening, not just out of habit, but out of desperation, hoping to find myself in him, or maybe hoping not to. It was wrong. I knew that, a twisted, creeping suspicion I couldn't shake once it embedded itself in my mind. Micah had always looked like me, even as a baby, that thick, unruly black hair that stuck out in every direction, no matter how you tried to tame it. The firm set of his chin when he was annoyed, that small head tilt he did when he was deep in thought, always left. Clarissa's friends used to laugh that she hadn't needed to carry a baby for 9 months. She'd just duplicated me. But resemblance doesn't equal truth. And after everything I'd learned, every lie Clarissa had spun like a web around our lives, I couldn't take anything at face value anymore. I needed confirmation, something concrete. So I bought a paternity test, $49 at CVS, wedged between the pregnancy tests and the arthritis cream. I tossed in some gum and a bottle of Advil too, just to throw off the teenage cashier, who barely looked up as he scanned my items. Just a middle-aged man with a headache and a handful of regrets. The instructions were insultingly simple. 2 swabs, one for me, one for Micah. Swipe the inside of your cheek, let it dry, pack it up, send it off. Wait, my sample was easy. I took it at my office after work, locking the door behind me like I was about to confess a crime. Maybe I was. Maybe I already had. I sealed my swab in its little plastic coffin like I was burying something. Then came the harder part, getting Micah's. How do you ask your son for DNA without wrecking his world? How do you collect evidence on someone who still thinks you hung the moon? I waited until Saturday morning. Clarissa had left early company. Retreat, she said. Probably another lie. Probably another man. Micah was eating cereal, completely at peace, swiping through his phone and chuckling at something only 12-year-olds understand. Hey buddy, I said, forcing a casual tone. Want to help me with a science project? He perked up immediately. He always had that spark, endlessly curious, especially when it came to anything remotely hands-on. What kind of science? DNA, I said, pulling out the second swab. Like in those crime shows you love. Thought it might be fun to learn something about our genes. He lit up like I'd handed him a mystery to solve. Cool. Is it for school? Something like that, I said, lying through my teeth while my chest twisted. Just swab your cheek for about half a minute. He followed every direction perfectly, completely unaware that this wasn't just a fun experiment, it was the unraveling of his world, of mine. I sealed his swab with hands that only trembled a little. Awesome, he said, licking cereal. Milk from his lip. How long till we get the results? 3 days. I told him. At least. That's what the website had promised. 72 hours of torment, of overthinking, of praying that I'd been wrong and dreading that I wasn't. The envelope arrived on a Wednesday. Plain white. Nothing to set it apart from the electricity bill or the coupon flyers. But it weighed more. It held more. I took it into my office and locked the door again. Inside, a single sheet of paper. Lines of sterile data, DNA markers, percentages, and one line that mattered more than anything I'd ever read in my life: paternity. Probability. Oh, I read it, then read it again, and a third time after that, hoping the numbers would magically rearrange. But they didn't. 0, not low, not unlikely. 0, not mine, never had been. No amount of resemblance could change what science had made indisputable. I folded the paper slowly, like I was sheathing a blade. I tucked it into the inside pocket of my jacket. A secret that could shatter lives. A truth that, once spoken, could never be taken back. That Friday, I cooked her favorite dinner like I was preparing for a final meal. Lemon chicken, seasoned with rosemary and garlic, roasted vegetables slow-cooked to perfection, and that bottle of wine she'd been saving for someday. I even lit that vanilla candle she liked but always forgot existed. Set the table with our wedding china, the plates we only pulled out for anniversaries or Thanksgiving. Micah was at Tyler's house for a sleepover. Perfect timing. No interruptions. No child caught in the blast radius of what I was about to detonate. Clarissa came home around 6:30, calling out her usual cheerful greeting like we were starring in a sitcom instead of living a lie. Her heels clicked across the hardwood. Her keys dropped into the bowl near the door. "Logan," she called, catching a whiff of the meal. "What's going on here?" She stepped into the dining room, smiling, surprised, pleased, probably already calculating what she might have forgotten: a birthday, an anniversary, a milestone. Something that could explain why her husband had gone all out on a Friday night. What's all this? She stood there in the doorway, unaware, still safe in her ignorance, still convinced the walls she'd built from lies were holding strong. I looked at her, then at the table, then at the wine breathing in the decanter, and I wondered, just for a second, if she'd recognize the truth when I slid it across the table, or if she'd try to lie her way through even that. She stood framed in the kitchen doorway, the picture of the polished, high-achieving woman she'd spent years molding herself into. Not a hair out of place, her makeup still pristine despite the long hours, and her tailored gray suit looked like it had just come off a boutique hanger, still stunning elegantly so in that sharp, composed way that had first caught my eye all those years ago in Dallas. "Just felt like making dinner," I said, not glancing up from the pan where I was reducing a sauce. "Thought we could use a calm night." In truth, what we needed went far beyond a quiet evening. We needed honesty, loyalty, even the most basic respect for the vows we once believed in. But peaceful dinners no longer fit into that reality. She leaned in and gave me a kiss on the cheek, cold and practiced, the same one she'd been giving me like clockwork for months now. "That's really thoughtful. I'll go change and then help you out." "No need," I replied, finally lifting my gaze to meet hers. "Everything's taken care of. Just open the wine." And so began our long performance. She chatted about her day, no doubt the censored, cleaned-up version, as I served the meal, poured her wine, and played the part of the attentive husband. She praised the chicken, commented on the perfectly cooked vegetables, asked if I'd tried a new sauce technique. We went through the motions, two people imitating the couple we used to be. Funny thing was, some part of me almost bought into the act. A small, foolish part wanted to believe we could go back to Sundays in the kitchen together, back to late-night debates about what movie to watch, back to when I thought she was mine, alone. But the truth sat in my memory like a splinter, those hotel key cards, each bearing names that weren't mine. We made it through dinner and halfway into dessert, her favorite, a chocolate mousse from the boutique bakery near Main Street, before I decided it was time. "I have something for you," I said, reaching into my jacket. Her face lit up with that rare, real expression I hadn't seen in so long. She looked like she used to on birthdays, when she still looked forward to surprises. "Logan, you didn't have to." This dinner was all ready. I set the envelope gently on the table, right next to her wine glass and the flickering candle. Plain white, unmarked except for the lab's insignia printed small in the corner. She froze, staring at it. For a second, she might have thought it was something sentimental. A surprise trip, maybe. Concert tickets. Her fingers trembled slightly as she picked it up and opened it, unfolding the single piece of paper inside. I watched her carefully, watched the color drain from her face, watched how her breath shortened, how her hand covered her mouth, like she was trying to trap the truth before it escaped. "Logan," she whispered, barely louder than the soft instrumental music floating from the speakers behind her. "I can explain, but..." I didn't say a word. I just sat there, watching her unravel the same way I had 3 days earlier, alone in my office, reading those same words, 0%, 13 years of deception, dissolved into a single, undeniable number. Her eyes met mine, glossy with tears that hadn't yet fallen, and for the briefest moment, I felt the sting of sympathy. Brief, fleeting, Then I slid my phone across the table. It thudded gently against the wood, screen facing up. The first screenshot was already pulled up, just one of many. Messages, recordings, images. 6 months worth of carefully archived proof. A digital trail of betrayal more damning than any trial testimony. Clarissa stared at the screen like it was toxic. Her expression changed by the second: shock, realization, fear, and then something I hadn't expected. Relief, not denial. Not defensiveness, but the kind of relief you see when a burden too heavy to carry alone finally falls to the ground. Like she'd spent months suffocating under secrets, and exposure, however devastating, was still easier than pretending. Her fingers hovered over the phone, then began scrolling through the damning evidence. With each swipe, her face lost more color. She studied each item like a defendant reading the charges stacked against them: text exchanges with Darren, blurry selfies, voice notes, half-hearted excuses sent at 1:17 a.m. March 15th, I said, my voice flat, the calm surface of deep waters. That's when it began, right? The tech summit downtown. He wrote, pleasure meeting you tonight. Hope we can continue our conversation about cloud strategies. She looked up, brain scrambling to piece together how much I knew. Whether there was a way out, some path to soften the blow, to recast what she'd done into something more forgivable. But it was pointless. I'd left no gaps, no unanswered questions. I'd excavated the truth with surgical precision, and we both knew it. Logan, please, she said softly, as though the phone she'd just set down might still burn her fingertips. It's not what you think, it's exactly what I think. I cut in. 6 months, Clarissa, half a year of business trips, and hotel rooms, of whispering to Darren about how distant I've become, how I never really understood you, how you regret ever marrying me. Her eyes welled up instantly, and soon the tears were pouring down her face, turning her mascara into long black rivers. She buried her face in her hands like she could stop the flood if she just pressed hard enough. I didn't plan this, she choked out between sobs. It started off innocent, just conversations, work stuff. He was just easy to talk to. You and we weren't okay. I felt invisible. I needed someone. I heard the words, but they didn't sink in. It felt like listening to a documentary in a language I didn't speak. The emotions were there, but the meaning was lost on me. We can fix it, she blurted out, reaching for my hand across the table. I let her touch linger for a second before pulling away. We can go to therapy, she continued, desperate now. I'll end things with Darren. I'll leave my job. Anything. Just, please, Logan. I love you. I love our family. Don't throw us away. Her fingers felt foreign against mine, like touching someone who looked familiar but wasn't who they used to be. You want to fix it? I asked, my voice steady to steady. It made her straighten up, thinking there might still be hope. Yes, please, she said, nodding frantically. I'll do whatever it takes. I leaned back and studied her through the flickering light of the candle between us. Her beauty hadn't vanished, her hair was disheveled, her makeup smeared, but she was still the woman I'd fallen for. At least, the shell of her was. The truth is, I said slowly, this stopped being just about Darren. Her expression shifted, panic replaced by confusion. What do you mean? I pointed at the envelope still sitting between us, white, clinical, and impossible to ignore. The DNA results, I said. They're conclusive. Mike isn't mine. Not even close. Her body jerked like I'd punched her. She recoiled into her chair, mouth slightly open. No, she whispered. That's not possible. Oh, it's possible, I replied. And when I think about it, a lot of things that didn't make sense before suddenly do. She tried to speak, but nothing came out. I saw you, I said, my voice low. Room 237. I wasn't even supposed to be on that floor. Just took a wrong turn. Her body collapsed like a puppet whose strings had been severed. The last bit of fight drained from her as she sank deeper into the chair. I stood, backing away from the table. Mike isn't mine, I repeated, my tone colder this time. But I'll still raise him, because he deserves better than the woman who gave birth to him. The next morning found me at a cafe in Vancouver that smelled like over-roasted beans and regret. I was pretending to review my presentation notes, but my phone was vibrating non-stop calls, texts, voicemail alerts. The night before, I'd sent everything to Officer Delaney: screenshots of rental listings, pictures of the guest calendar, and glowing online reviews from strangers praising their transformative stays in my bedroom. By the time I hit send on the last email, it was nearly dawn. Now the fallout was hitting. And somehow, despite everything, I was being painted as the villain. The first call came from Dana at 7:23 a.m. Pacific time. She didn't even say hello. "Do you have any idea what you've done?" she shrieked. "We're being kicked out. The landlord's evicting us. My kids don't have anywhere to go. This is all your fault." I set my coffee down, trying to hold back the disgust in my voice. "This happened because your sister was renting out my home without my knowledge to strangers. It has nothing to do with me. It has everything to do with you. You didn't have to call the cops. You could have talked to us like an adult. Instead of being a snitch. Dana, your sister turned my house into a spiritual retreat and charged people hundreds of dollars for sacred experiences in my bedroom, while I paid the mortgage. You think I should have kept that quiet?" "She was helping people," Dana snapped. "She created a space where people could feel safe. That's rare. She committed fraud. And she used the money to help you afford rent. That's not noble, it's illegal." For a moment, she was silent. But then came the low blow. "You never gave a damn about this family anyway. Always thought you were better than us just because you had a steady job. I cared enough to lend you money when you're dry or broke. I paid for your groceries when you couldn't. I even covered Christmas gifts for your kids. But I'm not going to sit back while my house becomes a business I didn't agree to." She called me a selfish bastard and hung up. 20 minutes later, Nadia's mother called, sounding far more composed. She opted for guilt over rage. "Marcus, sweetheart," she began. "This whole situation breaks my heart. We've always seen you as part of our family, and I thought I was," I replied flatly. "You've got to understand. Sometimes families support each other in ways that aren't traditional." "You mean like turning my home into a hotel?" Nadia was creating something meaningful, a place for connection and emotional healing. "Yes, Dana's family benefited too, but where's the harm in that?" "The harm is that she lied for over a year, and I came home from work trips to strangers sleeping in my house." I asked her directly. She denied it. She sighed deeply. "You were never home, Marcus. Always working, always gone." Nadia was just making use of the space, helping people. That stung. The hours I poured into my career had been the very thing that kept her lifestyle afloat. And now that same effort was being twisted into a character flaw. "She didn't build something beautiful," I said quietly. "She built a lie, and invited strangers into it. I'm just the one who finally turned on the lights. So, let me get this straight, because I worked long hours to support us. That somehow gave Nadia the green light to turn our bedroom into a public rental space. It gave her the excuse to chase purpose and fulfillment just because I wasn't around enough." Even her father chimed in with a message so condescending, I nearly crushed my phone. "You're being dramatic. You're never home anyway. Families help each other. Time to grow up and stop acting like a child." That was the moment it really hit me. Somehow, I had become the villain in a story I didn't even know was being written. I was now the possessive, narrow-minded husband who'd crushed his wife's spiritual calling and sabotaged his sister-in-law's housing situation, all because I had a problem with people using my home like a wellness center behind my back. Not one of them acknowledged the violation. No one stopped to think that letting strangers in and out of a shared bedroom while I was away paying the bills, no less, might actually warrant a conversation. Apparently, wanting basic respect and a say in how your home is used makes you controlling. That entire day was an avalanche of messages. Relatives I hadn't spoken to in years, friends of Nadia's I barely knew, even her yoga instructor felt the need to educate me about sacred space and how I was blocking Nadia's path to self-actualization. By the time I returned to my hotel room that evening, my phone was clogged with 43 missed calls and 67 messages, each one some variation of the same tired theme. I was the rigid, selfish husband who couldn't handle a woman's independence. None of them asked for my side. No one offered an apology. No one even suggested that I might have had a right to know what was going on in my own home. So when I flew back from Vancouver, I didn't waste a minute on explanations or heart-to-hearts. I filed a formal report with the police, detailing everything. Unreported income? Check. Illegal business activities in a residential zone? Yep. Other possible violations? Let the DA handle that. Then I hired the sharpest divorce attorney I could find and began the process immediately. No marriage counseling, no trial separation, no long, drawn-out discussions. Just a clear, clean break Nadia could walk away with. What she came in with. But the house, my house, the one she'd been profiting from behind my back that was mine to deal with, and deal with it I did. I listed it through a quiet private sale, signed the paperwork, and didn't breathe a word to her or her family until the deal was sealed. I boxed up my life, deleted every shred of camera footage from the cloud, and closed the door on that chapter for good within 3 weeks. The new owners were a young couple with a newborn. They were excited to convert my old home office into a nursery, a far better use of the space than whatever energy sessions Nadia had been facilitating. I moved into a modest condo a few towns away. 2 bedrooms, 1 bath, nothing flashy, just enough space for me and my peace. No extra beds for freeloading relatives. No keys floating around. No doormat. Just me, in a space that was fully, legally, entirely mine. For months afterward, they tried to reach out. Her sister, her parents, random cousins who had once eaten ribs with me at summer BBQs. My phone buzzed at all hours, early morning calls from Dana, drunken voicemails from Nadia, late night texts from her mother begging to talk like adults. At first, I read a few, then I stopped. Eventually, I blocked every number, every email, every account I could trace to them. It was like performing emotional surgery, excising the rotten parts so the rest could finally start to heal. The legal matters took about 6 months. Nadia pled guilty to tax evasion and was slapped with a hefty fine, probably more than she ever earned from her little operation. She also had to settle her back taxes, with penalties that turned the whole affair into a financial wreck. The zoning violations got dismissed once she agreed to shut everything down permanently. Dana got evicted and had to move back in with her parents, which only made them angrier. Word got around that I'd ruined 2 families just to make a point, that I was petty and vengeful, that I cared more about ownership than people. I didn't care. T work. People noticed. The wedding ring was gone. Nadia's name never came up. Most of my co-workers respected my silence. A few didn't. One evening at the bar, my friend Jake nudged me. "Come on, man. You can't just say it didn't work and leave it at that. You guys were solid for 5 years. What happened?" "She used the house for things I didn't agree with while I was away," I said, sipping my drink and watching the game. "Like what?" "Let's just say, someone else." I didn't offer more. Jake eventually gave up and moved on to talking about his own relationship issues. Maybe some people think I went too far. Maybe they think I threw away a marriage over a misunderstanding. That I should have been more supportive of her journey. But here's the truth I figured out in that quiet little condo. I'm not mad anymore. I was furious. The kind of anger that keeps you pacing through the night, clenching your jaw, ready to scream. But anger eats you alive. I didn't want to waste another ounce of energy on it. What I wanted, what I claimed, was my peace. And I have it now. I'm done with people who take and justify it with "we're family." Done with being the dependable one who gets no say. Done feeling like my boundaries are negotiable. The condo is half the size of my old house, but it's mine in a way that place never really was. Nobody else holds a key. Nobody else decides who enters or what goes where. When I get home, the coffee cup is exactly where I left it. The air smells like my cologne, my detergent. Everything in that space is there because I chose it. Some people might call that lonely. My sister, the only relative I stayed close with, worries I've walled myself off too much. "You can't hide from the world forever," she said during one of our monthly check-ins. "Not everyone's going to betray you." "I'm not hiding," I told her. "I'm just living with boundaries now." "What about dating? Don't you want someone new in your life?" I thought about it. The idea of inviting someone back in, of offering that level of trust again, it felt exhausting. Not impossible, but not something I needed just yet. Maybe one day, but not now. And truthfully, I was better than fine. I was remembering parts of myself I hadn't seen in years, cooking meals just because I wanted to, watching movies no one else would sit through, coming home to peace instead of emotional noise. Almost a year after everything was finalized, Nadia made one final attempt. A handwritten letter, sent to my office because she didn't have my new address. 3 pages of polished cursive on fancy paper. She said she was in therapy, that she understood the damage she'd done, that she was sorry for how things ended. She talked about her misguided mission to help others, how it clouded her view of our marriage. She missed our plans, our late night talks, the partnership we once had. I read it twice, actually. Then I tucked it away in my desk. I never replied. 3 months later, I tossed it in the trash without reading it again. This is my peace now. This quiet life where nothing is taken without permission, where my world is no longer a communal resource for other people's agendas, where trust is something earned, not expected. They might still believe I'm sulking, licking my wounds in solitude. They might assume I'm broken beyond repair. They're wrong. This isn't retreat. It's recovery. This isn't exile. It's clarity. And it's mine. All of it. Finally. Fully. Mine.